Reality Transurfing, Book 3, Forward to the Past, by Vadim Zeland. Read to you by the MCT Witch from the Magic Cauldron of Transformation. Chapter 4, Forward to the Past. Science fiction and magic sometimes captivate with their mystical secrecy, but that is nothing in comparison to that magnificent feeling of surprise and thrill you will experience once your seemingly unattainable dreams start coming true. It does take some time for that to happen, but you would already like to get a confirmation of what you've read, and you will get it. You will be the one to create magic, and you will see it with your own eyes. When the incredible turns into reality in front of your very own eyes, it looks fabulous. It is no longer science fiction. It is reality, which is much more amazing than any mysticism. The past is before you. Transaction. Remember, there were times in your life when you were happy. Sometimes melodies you've heard back then may remind you of these times. Occasionally you are briefly visited by a fleeting shadow of the mood you had back in those days, when you were full of hope, and life seemed to be, if not a celebration, then a preparation for one. At moments like that you start feeling nostalgic, thinking about what you've lost. You feel sad because this happened at some point in your past, a past which will never come back. Can't you really bring back anything from your past? In the foreword of this book, I promise that you will learn the meaning of the words forward to the past, only towards the end of the book. Now the time has come to fulfill my promise. Transurfing has already brought you many amazing discoveries. You are probably intrigued. What is in store for me this time? All tricks with time have firmly settled into the area of science fiction, despite the fact that even theoretical physics does not exclude the possibility of time travel. The idea that time travel is actually possible is greatly doubted. Indeed, moving in time seems rather doubtful, but that depends on the position of the observer. Recall the model of two-dimensional little men on a plane level. They cannot grasp where the third dimension is. From the standpoint of four-dimensional space, our three-dimensional environment appears flat as well. The rational mind will say, all these theoretical models are only my abstractions. However, I see what I see. There are plenty of incredible things in transurfing, yet I do not urge you to believe. I urge you to test the principles of transurfing. Of course, to test them, you'd need intention, some effort, and patience, because you won't get results immediately. External intention, in most cases, is working slowly and unnoticeably. It is hard for you to believe in the existence of this mysterious invisible power, which remains unnoticed by your eyes, especially if you are still simply reading, without making any attempt to put transurfing into practice. But now the moment has come when you will be able to see with your own eyes how you are moving in the space of variations. You will become convinced that you are able to move forward as well as back in time. It won't be anything like the journey depicted by science fiction writers. You and I are only dealing with real things. This time around, you won't have to wait for the results the activity of external intention will bring. You will see everything at once with your own eyes. And it won't be a trick or experiments with astral journeys and the space of dreams. For a few moments, you will actually be able to feel your movement in time and space. Let me repeat that. For a few moments, you will actually be able to feel your movement in time and space. In practice, this process comes down to one simple action: transaction, consisting of 3 elements. To fulfill the first element, you need to remember your central energy flows. If you have already been doing the energy exercises, you should be familiar with the way these flows feel. First, you quickly run through your body with your inner gaze and release any tension in your muscles, getting yourself in a state of relaxation. Then in your mind, imagine how energy is moving with the ascending and descending flows along the spine. For a quick launch of energy fountains, there is one efficient method you could use. Imagine that from the very center of your body, 2 horizontal arrows are going out. They are opposite in direction. One is directed forward and one directed backwards. The arrows go out of your body about 30 centimeters or more. Now, in your mind, turn the arrows at the same time. The one in front goes up and the one behind you goes down so that they end up standing vertically along your spine. You will immediately feel how the energy flows got noticeably boosted. You could do this exercise both standing and walking. It is as if you are turning a key that activates the central flows. It is not necessary to turn these into fountains and to close them into a sphere. The point is to image how you are being permeated by the flows of energy. It doesn't matter that you do not feel them yet. Real sensation will come with practice. Perform these exercises when you are simply walking or going somewhere. You will feel the sense of relaxation and lightness. The turning of the key is the first element of a transaction. Let me repeat that. The turning of the key is the first element of a transaction. You can complete this element in any situation when you need to quickly get into a state of relaxation. Try to turn the key many times during the day, especially when something is on your mind. You will notice right away that the key releases any tension. All of us are constantly under the weight of big or small problems. The weight is automatically reflected in your muscles. Say you are walking and thinking about something troublesome, worrying, or unpleasant. In that moment, remember the key and turn it. Let me repeat that. In that moment, remember the key and turn it. Notice that before some muscles were tense, but now they are relaxed, and you felt relief. It would be useful to get a habit of turning the key as often as possible during the day. By doing so, you will always be able to free and clear the energy of intention of excess potentials, which are putting you down. Regard this as the key to the box of conditionality. Let me repeat this. Regard this as the key to the box of conditionality, where you are constantly being imprisoned by dire circumstances. The key won't relieve you of importance, but it will significantly facilitate the process of releasing the energy of intention on the physical as well as on an energy level. The second element of a transaction is visualizing the slide of your goal. Let me repeat that. The second element of a transaction is visualizing the slide of your goal. Once you have turned the key, launch the slide of your goal in your mind. Do not forget that you have to imagine yourself into the slide and not to watch it as if you were watching a movie. Imagine yourself in the situation. Imagine the sensations that you are experiencing inside that slide. Touch the surrounding environment with your hands. Imagine the sounds, the smells, the other sensations that you are better at imagining. Play the slide in your mind 1 or several minutes. It is advisable to do the transaction when you are calmly walking in a familiar area. You could look around, but it is better to look down, ahead of where you are going, in order to focus your attention on the slide. Once you have managed to more or less clearly imagine yourself in the slide, look ahead with a conscious gaze. Let me repeat that. Once you have managed to more or less clearly imagine yourself in the slide, look ahead with a conscious gaze. Do not think about anything and do not analyze, but simply look with a clear gaze ahead and into the distance at what you see. A clear gaze is the third and last element of a transaction. Let me repeat that. A clear gaze is the third and last element of a transaction. For the duration of a few seconds, right before your eyes, there will be a change of nuances in the decorations around you. Once you've looked at a familiar view with a clear gaze, you've noticed that the picture is kind of the same, but there's something different about it now. Some sort of barely perceptible and unexplainable nuance has been added to the scenery, as if you have seen it somewhere before. Or it could be something new, a bit unusual, not specific details of the image, but a certain aftertaste, a sensation, a mood, a nuance. For example, you have looked at a house that you have already seen many times, but now you've noticed its color and outdoor lighting and realized that once you have already experienced something like this. In individual cases, you could get a clear feeling of something familiar that has happened before. You could have probably already come across such a strange effect when the sensations of the past suddenly surface in your memory. Not actual memories of the past, but specific sensations of the past. Deja vu. This effect happens to you quite often. You just don't notice anything because you accept the situation as it is. In other words, you are sleeping awake. So a transaction allows you to notice how the world is changing before your eyes. You have a vague feeling of something familiar, or, on the contrary, you feel a new, unusual nuance emerging. What is going on here? Material realization of the layers of your world is moving in the space of variations. What do you see? You see the nuances of decorations being changed. Let me repeat that. You see the nuances of decorations being changed. As you know, different sectors in the space of variations have different scripts and decorations. Depending on the relative distance between the sectors, the differences will be more or less prominent. The movement of material realization happens evenly, thus unnoticeably. You won't be able to catch this movement, much like the movement of the minute arrow on a small watch. Striking changes and nuances are only felt when there is a rather abrupt transfer from one life track to another. In such cases, you will encounter signs that will clearly attract your attention. In the process of transaction, visualization of the slide of your goal increases the gust of wind of external intention. Let me repeat that. In the process of transaction, visualization of the slide of your goal increases the gust of wind of external intention. The parameters of your thought radiation differ dramatically from the current life track. The turning of the key increases the energy of radiation modified by your thoughts. As a result, the movement of realization along the sectors is accelerated. A clear gaze makes you ready to wake up and catch the changes. That is why you manage to notice the change in nuances of the decorations for the duration of several moments, while the gust of wind still lasts. Perform the transaction dispassionately, as you would do when brushing your teeth or your hair. It might not work straight away, just like riding a bicycle. One cannot ignore the fact that during a transaction you are touching upon external intention. and that is an elusive thing beyond any control. I advise you to treat lightly the fact that it didn't work right away. It will definitely work anyway. Make spontaneous attempts. Do not try hard. Do not put effort into it. And don't attach great significance to the actual transaction technique. It is quite possible that you will feel your way to a completely different technique. Act as if, by the way, as you wish. The lower the importance of a transaction, the better will be the result. Let me repeat that. The lower the importance of a transaction, the better will be the result. If you do not strain yourself, then everything comes easy. It may seem to you that if you were to repeat the transaction very often, then moving towards the goal will turn into a runaway process. That is actually true, but the thing is that you won't be able to always perform the transaction flawlessly, that is, dispassionately. The old habit of wanting ruins it all. If you plan on tormenting yourself with transactions, then you have a strong potential of the desire to necessarily get a result and get it faster. There will also be a potential if you are filled with the necessity to act and force yourself to do transactions. Necessity is also an excess potential. Thus, I have always urged you to simply give yourself pleasure by visualizing the slide of your goal, and not to force yourself because you have to. Potentials of desire and potentials of necessity deprive you of the energy of intention, so there won't be any gust of wind, and thus the transaction won't work. Let me repeat that. Potentials of desire and potentials of necessity deprive you of the energy of intention, so there won't be any gust of wind, and thus the transaction won't work. The desire to see the result is particularly great at first. I recommend that you constantly pay attention to the state of your desire. As soon as you've caught yourself wanting to get a result, take a break and start over a bit later. If you have caught yourself falling over backwards and trying to do the transaction properly, as a result of which you are straining yourself, again, put off your attempts. Perform the transaction only once in a while, for your pleasure and curiosity. You shouldn't obsess with the transaction. It serves only the purpose of making you see with your own eyes your movement in the space of variations. However, your main attention in practicing transurfing should be directed at playing the slide of your goal and visualizing the process of realizing the current link of the transfer chain. External intention is working anyway, regardless of whether you see it or not. But now you have access to an illuminator of sorts into the space of variations. You are offered an opportunity to actually watch your movement in the space of variations. It is quite impressive. You won't be disappointed. End segment.